part home to do a little more work on that planetarium show.
Evidence was especially hard to take.
If we can come out of spring practice with 3 or 4 running backs that we can count on and compete with, then we're going to get some help from our freshmen.
Help is on the way.
I don't know, I don't know who it will be. We've got, all of the kids that we sign at running back, we feel like as good athletes as we have on campus now. And certainly some of them are going to, step out front when they get there and be able to help us quicker than others, but all of them will be able to play in time.
Your new coach, Jack Crow, is he a wishbone?
I'm excited about him. I really am. I've known Jack for a long time and came very close to hiring Jack last year when we came to Auburn, and it just didn't work out. And I'm sorry that he went to Wyoming and had to come back in a year, kind of like I did.
You know about that, though, don't you?
But I am excited. He knows, he knows our offense, and he's been involved with the Wishbone for 10 or 12 years now. And of course, he's a native of Birmingham, and we just tickled to death to have him in our program.
Despite the strong winds at Rolling Hills, the first-round scores were relatively low, especially that of John Morrow from Florida State. He fired a course record 63, 9 under par to grab a commanding 6-stroke lead over Seminole teammate David Blackman. Needless to say, Florida State has the first-round team lead at 291. They're followed by Auburn at 299. Alabama, Kentucky, and Miami follow them at 301. We follow the top seeds today: Steve Lowry of Alabama, Tom Knox from Wake Forest, and Steve Kepler of Florida State. Lowry finished the day at 1/73 in a tie for 5th. Knox had a round of 76, 4 over, but he blasted this beautiful shot from the sand on the par 3 8th hole for a birdie. Kepler had this nice 17-foot putt for birdie on the par 4 7th. He finished the day at 78. Alabama coach Conrad Railing said that with today's wins, most of the scores were very good, and he told me that he hoped his team could play well enough to repeat as champions.
As you know, we had 2 young men from our team last year that aren't playing this year, and it has hurt us tremendously. But we've been an explosive team. I would say that we are not quite ready, but we have an outside chance, and I think our players have the ability. It just depends on if they keep calm and collected. They have the ability to do it. And
Round 2 of the Southeastern Intercollegiate Golf Tournament will tee off tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock from Rolling Hills, weather permitting. Reporting from Rolling Hills, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
Strong winds today at Rolling Hills didn't raise the scores as some expected. In fact, John Morrow of Florida State established a new course record by firing a 63, 9 under par. That was the day's best, 6 strokes better than Seminole teammate David Blackman. They led FSU to the first-round lead with a 291. Auburn is second, 8 strokes back. Alabama, Kentucky, and Miami follow with team totals of 301. One of the better shots on the day had to be this one by Tom Knox of Wake Forest. This blast from the trap gets him a birdie on 8. Knox finished with a 76. Steve Krepler of Florida State showed one of the reasons the Seminoles are favored to capture this 3-day event. He sinks this 17-foot putt for birdie here on number 7. He had a 78. The 26 teams are back in action tomorrow morning with tee-off time at Rolling Hills set for 8:30, and the public is invited. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
That is just a fact of a newspaper article blown out of proportion that created some difficulty for me and my family and for the East Tennessee State University. It was unfounded. It was purely no one in any responsible position gave the man the facts that he supposedly thought he was writing, and it's just one of those things that was unfortunate.
Skinny, we try to lose some weight. Mark, how much did you lose?
This is the young lady that the controversy was raised over. She's been helping us.
This headline appeared recently in a Mobile newspaper. The story concerned the massive 800 telephone system of Mobile-based American Electrodynamics, parent company of National Telemarketing, Cimarron Media Consultants, Answering 800 America, and the Action Revival Church Incorporated. It was the latter operation that was first brought to our attention by religious leaders in the Trinity Gardens area who were themselves curious about their new neighbor.
There's been an arousal of suspicion. For instance, they have guards that walk day and night. My basic concern would be what they are trying to indoctrinate, to teach in the community at large.
Action Revival Church, Inc. is located here at 1800 Beltline Highway along with 4 other businesses. Some residents in the area were concerned that the Action Revival Church may be affiliated with Reverend Sung Young Moon's Unification Church. Here's what happened on Wednesday, March 17th, when I went in to inquire about Action Revival Church. The camera remained outside as I identified myself and my purpose. The gentleman I spoke with refused to identify himself or to reveal anything about the church, its origin, or its purpose. He made reference to the Cadillac limo out front, said his name was Fred Thutpucker, and asked us to leave. We left. The following day, our probe led us to the Mobile Better Business Bureau, where Fred Thutpucker's true identity was revealed. He's Charles Cole, co-owner and operator of these 4 businesses and the Action Revival Church. We had unknowingly photographed his wife the day before as she threatened to call the cops. Meet the Reverend Dolores Cole, pastor of the Action Revival Church.
Well, she told me on the phone, this is Dolores Cole. Then she told me the report, the Better Business Bureau report, is incorrect regarding her name. And I asked for the correct name, or what was wrong with our report regarding her name, and she declined to give me that information.
The Better Business Bureau became interested in Charles and Dolores Cole early last year. Inquiries were coming into the office from all over the nation concerning a business located in Mobile, Alabama, which offered partnerships at $5,000 a pop.
These firms, under their various names, advertise on television a variety of products. And you call this 800 number today, and operators are waiting. Then if I am the distributor in Topeka, then I would become involved in it with the people who respond to the ad in my area. And therefore, I'm going to make some money if I am the distributor.
Another organization has also been looking into the operations of Charles and Dolores Cole, the FBI, and its investigation has resulted in numerous counts of wire and mail fraud in Arkansas. The Coles have turned themselves into federal authorities here in Mobile and have been released without bond pending trial. We also learned today that the Coles are being investigated by the Mobile FBI. Meanwhile, Reverend Dolores Cole told me by phone that she's innocent, that God is on her side, and she referred other inquiries to her attorney.
Montgomery, Alabama is a long way from Laos, Southeast Asia. That's where all of these people are from. They've gathered here at St. Bede's Church to celebrate the Laotian New Year. 28-year-old Vian Sasanbal and her husband and daughter came to the United States in 1978.
Our ceremony about this, that means some kind like a American New Year or Christmas time. We will have only one time. that, you know, the basi is that mean looks like the Christmas tree. You would hang something on, you know, like a Santa Claus would see that. And we would have our string, you know, to tie our hand. That mean, you know, everything would come and hurt us. That mean we would get some good prey from the God.
The other Laotians at the gathering are from Mobile and Opelika, where they've readjusted their families and are adapting to the American way of life. Vienne, who works at St. Margaret's Hospital, seems to be very happy in the United States.
Oh, I love to be in here, you know, but everything's still missing our country. But I love American because I have my freedom. I could do what I want to do. You know,
Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
On the law. That's why we love that.
Then it puts everything else, you know, it's proper. At 9:30, right here.
Well, I did several things, commercials, that type of thing when I first got the show. I was offered a lot of different things, movies and television, that kind of thing, but I only wanted to do either a family-type show or a children's show, and some of the things I was offered wasn't the caliber of work that I was used to, so went to night school, got my real estate license so that I wouldn't be under pressure, and then I went into country singing some after that. I was traveling, doing, you know, still staying in show business per se, but that was just a backup. And now just recently I finished a gospel album, finally, so I'm very happy about that. And I've been traveling, you know, I've been to various churches and giving my Christian witness.
Peyton has actually been serving as president of Tuskegee Institute since last August, and since that time he has moved quickly to establish himself at the school by, among other things, setting into motion plans for the first aerospace program in the nation at a predominantly black college, and by strengthening ties between the school and the state legislature. But today, even though what has been accomplished at Tuskegee Institute was praised, the standing room only crowd of more than 3,000 people at Tuskegee Chapel heard more about the future that faces the school's fifth president, a future that several speakers said will present difficult tests for higher education. The keynote speaker of the inaugural program, the president of the Ford Foundation, Franklin Thomas, said as the cost of higher education continues to rise, government support for higher education is apparently dropping. But he says he believes Peyton can maintain a high standard of education at Tuskegee Institute through a combination of practicality and vision. Following Thomas's address, Peyton was presented the Presidential Medallion of Tuskegee Institute and had some words of his own for the crowd. Peyton agreed that the coming decade will be a challenge to all institutes of higher education, but pledged his full effort to keep moving ahead. Part of his assault on the future will be a broadening of the school's technical training role and expansion of the liberal arts programs.
If we do not teach our own, nobody is going to do it for us.
Peyton says unless black people and other minorities find a way into the economy of the future, much progress of the past will be lost. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News in Tuskegee.
Most of the people who live in Carver Court subdivision have been here since 1945. They've raised families and are now retired. 12 of the houses in the neighborhood border 3 Mile Creek and will be bought by the city. Some families have already moved out, abandoning houses which have been flooded 3 times. Others must now face leaving a home that is paid for to find a new place to live. They're old, they have little money, and they're worried.
And I don't have but just a little income, you know, what I get every month. And you, like what you said, we don't know what they're going to give us. And we already got this, you know, paid and all. And I know I went through a whole lot to get this paid.
And you're worried about...
I don't want to lose all what I had, and then I won't have nowhere to go.
You know, of course, I have some children, but I don't like to stay with them. And I don't like for them to stay with me, because we love to stay apart, see one another when we get ready to go. But it seems like that maybe that's what I have to do for a while.
Visa Dillard's house is the cutoff point. Her next-door neighbor's property will be purchased. Mrs. Dillard will stay. Left here.
I'm happy for them. Very happy for them. No, I wouldn't dare feel it. Very happy. All I want is keep the water out.
Most of the residents facing a move have mixed emotions. They're relieved and reluctant. Saying goodbye to a neighborhood of friends after 30 years is not easy.
Because for the last 38 years, we haven't had any trouble in this neighborhood. One of the best that I believe in Mobile. Maybe some just as good, but I still say it's the best one.
A Fayette County couple is the new outstanding young farm family in Alabama. Tommy and Teresa Price operate an 820-acre farm just outside the town of Fayette and were chosen from 55 competing families as the state's best. Tommy has seen the economic picture down on the farm fluctuate wildly in the 14 years he's been at it. He's fully aware of the difficulty many young people are having as they try to establish their careers in agriculture in this time of rising production costs and falling prices to farmers. But he's optimistic.
It's in your blood. Once you start, you can't get away from it. I don't think you can. It's what I've always wanted to do. It's what I love to do. Somewhere down the road, this thing's going to turn around. It's going to have to, because somebody's going to have to raise the food for the folks.
The Price operation is diversified, producing soybeans, corn, wheat, grain, sorghum, and hogs. Teresa is a former school teacher, but now she splits her time between duties around the house and on the farm. She oversees part of the family's hog operation, planted all the farm's winter wheat, and is raising the couple's two daughters, Anna and Brandy, in an environment she believes is unmatched anywhere else.
I think it's a very pleasant atmosphere for children to be raised on a farm. They're very close to Mother Nature and seeing things planted and grown and gathered. I think it's important when they say outstanding young farm family that it does take the whole family to have a happy farm life.
As winners in the Young Farm Family competition, the Prices represent the best Alabama agriculture has to offer for the future. And in addition to the recognition given to them, the couple receives the use of a new Ford pickup truck for 1 year. Holly Midgley reporting from Fayette County.
The bullets of the guns and the hand grenades being used by the guardsmen aren't real. Neither are the missions being flown by the jet pilots. However, both the troops and the commanders are dead serious in their efforts to execute these war preparedness exercises.
The last 2 days we've had a simulated ORE, Operational Readiness Exercise, put on us by the 117th Wing, try to evaluate our ability if we were in a war zone to survive, its ability to survive exercise. We have had a day and a half of bombs, buildings blowing up, snipers. We've had aircraft accidents, just almost anything that you might have in a war zone or what we think we can do in that type of situation. And they're here to judge to see if we could survive if this was a real situation.
Sergeant Carmichael says while most of the exercises went smoothly, there were some weak points.
We had some real good points. We had some individual people that look real fine. But like all exercises we get in, we found some places that we're not polished like we ought to be. We've made some mental errors, some mistakes that I don't feel like we should have made. Overall, I feel like we're satisfactory, but we're not as good as I feel like we ought to be.
From Danley Field, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Names to Governor Hemphill.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
And the last person I needed in. Thank you, Peter. Let's make follow-up session really a successful program. Thank you.
The former president arrived for the nearly half-hour-long news conference amid a flurry of Secret Service agents. He had no opening statement, but went straight to answering questions from a crowd of about 30 reporters and spectators. Many of those questions dealt with the Reagan administration, which Ford, for the most part, spoke of favorably. But he was critical of the president's handling of the situation in Poland, repeating what he said earlier, that when the White House decided to pay $71 million to keep loans to Poland from defaulting following the declaration of martial rule in that country, the U.S., in a sense, showed support for martial law. As for other foreign relations, Ford says he thinks the U.S. can play an important part in settling the dispute between the United Kingdom and Argentina, following the recent takeover of the British-ruled Falkland Islands by Argentine forces. Ford says the U.S. should act as a mediator in that dispute and try to help the two countries reach a peaceful settlement. Ford says Reagan so far has done the right thing in El Salvador, and Ford indicates he thinks the recent elections there are a step toward peace. Though the former president was slightly critical of the Reagan White House, he was even tougher on the Carter administration, suggesting many serious economic problems facing the country today were founded under President Carter.
From Ford to Carter, the prime interest rate was 6.25%. When it went from Carter to Reagan, it was 21.5%. All I can say is something must have gone wrong for 4 years under President Carter.
Ford did show hope, however, for the country's economic future.
But I'm convinced we're on the right path. And if the president stands firm, doesn't capitulate to short-term political expediency, I'm convinced that the economy, come the summer and the fall, will turn around and will again be on the path of a healthy economic recovery. I'm sure that...
As for his own politics, Ford says after 28 and a half years in the nation's capital, he has no plans for pursuing any more political offices. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News in Auburn.
Its forces and to
The Seminoles led the 54-hole event from start to finish, and the main reason was the play of individual champion John Morrill. His course record 9 under par 63 in Friday's opening round set a pace the rest of the 2016 field just couldn't catch. After a round of 79 in Saturday's wins, he fired a 74 today. That's him with a putt for par on 14. Morrill finished the event at 2 under 214. And ironically, it was his first tournament with the already powerful Seminoles.
Yeah, this is my first trip. They've been playing really well. They've had a second in Mexico earlier on, and 2 firsts in a row before this, I think. So they've been doing very well. I'm just glad to be on the team.
The win was Florida State's second straight in important tournaments. They won the Stillwater's junior-senior title on Lake Martin last weekend. And needless to say, FSU coach Don Veller is extremely pleased with his team's play.
Because this is a big tournament, 26 teams, and pretty highly, carefully selected. So, yes, I am quite happy.
Was there really any doubt in your mind as to whether or not your team would win this tournament?
Yes, so I'm supposed to be a pessimist anyhow. So, yes, there was, in my mind, there was, because in golf, all you have to do is have one bad day and somebody else have a hot day, and you're in trouble.
Yeah. Auburn and Georgia tied for second, 12 strokes behind the Seminoles, and 4 strokes back were Miami and Tennessee. Defending champion Alabama finished in a tie for 9th. Individually, Jim Gallagher of Tennessee was second, 4 strokes behind Morrill. Auburn's Tim Craffle was third, 6 strokes off the lead. Florida State wins the 1982 Southeastern Intercollegiate Golf Championships.
But I'm convinced we're on the right path. And if the president stands firm, doesn't capitulate to short-term political expediency, I'm convinced that the economy, come the summer and the fall, will turn around and will again be on the path of a healthy economic recovery. I'm sure.
There were some noticeable differences on this first day of spring practice. Last year, Coach Pat Dye spent much of his time separating the men from the boys, but that's not the case this year. He knows who his players are. There's also an air of confidence this spring that was missing a year ago. That confidence has brought talk of SEC championships. If the old saying defense wins football games, the Tigers should win their share next fall. 8 starters returned this spring, including All-American candidate Donnie Humphrey from Huntsville.
I feel defensive line, I feel that we're real strong in that because we got a lot of experience with Ben Thomas, Dal Auburn, Vernon, and plus we got Doug coming in from East Carolina.
A sure All-SEC candidate, Chris Martin, is back at linebacker. He's another Huntsville product.
Coming from the 4-3 defense, playing middle linebacker, I hardly ever dropped in the curl, and last year I had a little problem with it, but this year I don't think it's been a problem because I know what to work on, know what to look for, and I think it's going to be one of my better points.
A lot of questions will be answered this spring about Auburn's offense. Former UNA assistant Jack Crow has taken over the quarterbacks. Hartzell's Randy Campbell will be given a shot at the #1 job, but sophomore Ken Hobby has the inside track.
We're going to definitely throw the ball more this coming fall, and that's what we're going to have to do if we're ever going to try to win that national championship. We're going to have to throw it and throw it well. So I'm glad he told me that because I like to throw the ball.
Ron O'Neal remains a mystery. Tiger coaches are hoping he'll return to form. Auburn's sensational freshman class may help that situation. Despite the question marks offensively, Coach Pat Dye is optimistic.
Well, I think we can come out of spring practice a lot better football team than we were a year ago for several reasons. Just the mere fact that we've been here a year and they understand our system, and we know the players a lot better. But the other thing is, of course, we got a lot of players coming back from last year.
Coach Pat Dye hopes to come out of spring practice with 2 proven quarterbacks, a sure fullback, and a solid guard situation offensively. Defensively, well, there are a lot of people returning. But Coach Dye is looking for more depth to carry them through the season. A season that includes 8 home games, the first 6 in a row. It's no wonder they're talking SEC championships. In Auburn, Dave Cody, 31 Eyewitness Sports.
About 150 people attended the meeting at the library in East Tallahassee. City, county, state, and federal officials voiced concern for the workers affected in the mass layoff and said they would do everything in their power to attract new industry to the area. Alabama Congressman Bill Nichols told the gathering the company and workers may qualify for assistance from the Department of Labor under a program to give aid when a local market is damaged by foreign imports. Nichols said the Tallahassee Mill is to complete the necessary forms for trade readjustment benefits, but pointed out these benefits can't be paid until unemployment benefits are exhausted. Alabama Development Office official Reuben Finney says the closing of the industrial division at the Tallahassee Mill may be a blessing to the area.
That oftentimes it takes something like this to really, so to speak, wake an area up as to how important manufacturing jobs are to it, and to get the community and everybody in the community involved in getting that community in a position to be attractive to new industry.
ADO officials say they will begin to identify available property for industry location. Mount Vernon Mills has reportedly agreed to sell company-owned land if an industry will locate in the Tallahassee area. Mac Carmack, WSFA TV News.
Philip Steele was 38 years old. He had 7 children. He lived in a brick house on 9th Street in Prattville, and police say it was here during a cookout with family and friends that a man walked in, pointed a rifle at Steele, and fired 8 shots. At least 2 hit Steele in the hand and in the face and put an end to his life. Steele's older sister, Thelma Robinson, says her brother was a hard worker and a fair man. He began working when he was very young in the print shop of the Prattville Progress newspaper, back when the paper was in an older building downtown. From there he went to college, and in 1965 he started teaching in Shelby County, eventually winding up as principal at the Prattville High School 9th grade. This morning, the hallways there were quieter than usual. A simple black ribbon was taped to the door of Steele's office. Teachers, office workers, and students, the people he watched and worked with every day, cannot believe he's gone.
It's different, you know, every morning on announcements, you hear him, and then you miss it. So
you walk in school and it's like he's gone, It's hard. You'll never find another one anywhere like Philip Steele. He was the best man that ever hit foot in this school.
Thursday, at 3 o'clock, Steele will be buried. It is clear long after that he will be remembered.
So we're just trying to keep in our mind that, you know, he's still here with us. Well, all of us miss him, you know.
Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News in Prattville.
Heflin told members of a Montgomery Rotary Club that new leadership will soon take over in the Soviet Union. And at this point, the United States is uncertain as to what kind of relations will develop between the U.S. and Russia.
We may have different modus operandi from the present leadership.
On another topic, Heflin said the only way President Reagan's economic plan will work is if interest rates are allowed to drop.
High interest rates is the root ill of most of our problems, and that in order for the Reagan program to work, you have got to have a reduction in interest rates to bring about increased expansion and increased productivity and increased investment in this country.
Senator Heflin says he wants to support the president's plan, but says if the plan does not work, other measures must be taken. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
To meet Mr. Charles Humphreys. Attorney Argo presented the following proposed general bill to the commission. The following letter was presented to the commission. This is a
Before testimony began in the case this afternoon, PSC staff member Deborah Biggers petitioned the commission to compel the gas company to respond to a series of questions left unanswered in a pre-hearing request. Attorney for Allegasco, Mike Warren, said the questions were not proper for a pre-hearing motion and should be taken up during cross-examination at the hearing. The commission took Biggers' request under advisement. The first to testify in the rate case was Rex Leisinger, president of Alabama Gas Corporation. He said the company filed for the rate increase because of declining earnings. Leisinger cited inflation, declining sales volumes, and inadequate rate relief in the past as the reasons for the loss of revenues. Leisinger said conservation by customers, plant closings, and production slowdowns led to declining sales of gas. Leisinger was questioned at length about company practices by Assistant Attorney General Wendell Cawley. Cawley wanted to know what cutbacks the company could make to save money, and will another boost in rates prompt customers to conserve more, once again driving down sales. The commissioners have said they'll give the rate request close and careful scrutiny. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
Beautiful story we find in our history book. 13 poor.
The truth is, the federal budget was literally hemorrhaging when Ronald Reagan became the President of the United States. In my administration, shortly after we took the oath of office, we were in the depths of the worst recession in 40 years. And today, under the Reagan administration, we have serious economic problems. Let's look overseas, if we might, for a minute, and turn to Western Europe. In the first few months of the Ford administration, there was deep concern among our NATO allies as to the role of the United States as the leader of the Western world, and the NATO partners were
Alabama Senate District 27, which is made up of House Districts 79, 80, and 81, has been vacant for just more than a month. Only 2 men have qualified to enter the special election. One is Barry Teague, the former U.S. attorney who is now practicing law in Montgomery and is the Democratic nominee. The other is Gordon Tucker, the national chairman of United Homeowners of America, a utility watchdog organization. He's the Alabama Conservative Party candidate. Teague is running on his record as U.S. attorney. Tucker is running on what might be called an anti-utility public service commission platform, a little moderate Reaganomic conservative philosophy, and a little tough crime law thrown in. Teague was nominated by the Democrats after a somewhat heated selection process by the state Democratic Party. He has the support of several private associations like the political arm of the Alabama Education Association and others. Tucker, on the other hand, at first considered teaming up with the Republican Party, but when they failed to select someone to run in the race, Tucker joined the Alabama Conservative Party. Tucker contends his Conservative Party affiliation makes him the man against the machine, implying Teague would be loyal to the groups that support him, while he says he would be philosophically free to represent the working person. But Teague contends the support indicates the popularity of his political ideals. It's been a short and relatively clean campaign that will end tomorrow. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
It's called TV and Cablevision Magazine. For just $12,000, a person could buy a franchise and issue the magazine in his area. The magazine is free to the public, but the money comes from advertisements. Stephen Sawyer and his wife bought a franchise in July of 1981. Sawyer says they got 1 month of good service from the Memphis company, then things went downhill from there.
One of the problems that we had was getting people to pay for the advertising up front, and we didn't think that was going to be a problem to get them to pay up front until we started talking to them about how they did their other advertising with you and with the newspaper and with radio stations, and everybody else bills, and then they're paid in arrears. But they were demanding that we got our money up front.
Sawyer later found out that other publishers were having problems with the company, but by that time it was too late. He says he filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau and went to the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Agency, but he says neither were unable to help him very much. Then Sawyer called the authorities in Memphis, but Sawyer says even with their help, he doesn't think he'll ever get his money back. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Alagasco is asking for a $21.8 million increase in rates, which would raise average residential customer bills by about $2.35 a month. President of Alabama Gas Corporation, Rex Leisinger, says the company has lost money due to inflation, declining demand for gas, and inadequate rate relief in the past. The PSC only granted 35% of a rate increase sought by the utility in December of 1980, and commissioners say the latest rate request will be looked at carefully. Under cross-examination by Assistant Attorney General Wendell Colley, Leisinger said the demand for gas had dropped because of plant closings, production slowdowns, and conservation by energy-conscious residential customers. Alagas is expected to call several top executives of the company and expert witnesses during the hearings. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
A reasonable compromise would seem to be hovering over California. Most other nations, United States, our European allies, spend somewhere between 4% and 7% each year of their GNP on national security. Many people, as a result, say the Japanese have been getting a free ride, with them devoting only one. We have a litany of problems on our doorstep, but I'm always an optimist. I think most Americans are. And I won't.
But I think at the same time we cannot afford to have deficits in the amount of 95 to 125 or in that neighborhood of billions of dollars. Every time you increase the deficit, you are having a situation where government's going to have to borrow more money.
It took almost 3 hours for both sides to agree. The power company will have a 13.5 to 14.5 return of equity. For this year, Alabama Power can increase the rates a maximum of 4%. In 1983, the rates will be tabulated by quarters. There will be no more than a 3% increase in the first quarter, 2 in the second, 1 in the third, and 2 in the fourth. In 1984, the increase will equal no more than the Consumer Price Index, or 2% per quarter, whichever is less. Then in 1985, there will be no more than a 2.5% increase, or the Consumer Price Index. But the entire process will come before the Commission for review. PSC President Billy Joe Camp then asked the utility to agree to several other stipulations. First, that $250,000 in executive salaries, advertising, contributions, lobbying, and/or political promotion be carried below the line. Even though the power company's attorney voiced his disapproval, Power Company Vice President Elmer Harris says he also disagrees with the concept, but will evaluate the plan before he accepts anything. Both sides will meet again on Wednesday to complete the formal documents. Earlier today, the Commission heard opening day testimony on a rate request filed by Alabama Gas Corporation last December. Don Phelps has that story.
I just want to make it clear that
Alabama Power Company spokesman Brian Allen says with a device which would be attached to the meter in operation, only enough electricity for essential use would be allowed through, which means a customer would not be able to heat his home and use electrical appliances or a television at the same time. Allen says the devices are currently being used in northern states where winter temperatures are much more extreme than in Alabama.
Any customer that's in arrears, instead of cutting them off, discontinuing their service in bad weather, the utilities up there are putting a device on their meter that only allows a small amount of electricity to be used just for lights and to run heater motors. Any more than that would trip a breaker.
Allen says the power company committee is researching the use of the devices to see if their implementation in Alabama would be of significant benefit to consumers.
Since this device would be used to keep customers with some amount of electricity during severe weather, that it's probably not quite as applicable down here or useful as would be in the north.
The cost of the device, according to Allen, will be about $40 and would be passed on to the consumers. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
I read an article last week on it, and I thought it was very interesting. And that was the first I'd heard until I did a little talking to the company, and we were looking at it because some of the we have a committee that's investigating and in contact with other utilities